Yeah, welcome everyone to the next episode of At the Citadel. This time we have our friends from PrimeDAO back, and we're here to discuss with them about their experience as the first partners of Balancer Quest. My name is Alejandro. I'm the head of communications at Paladin, and Luuk. We know each other, but feel free to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I hear myself in your mic. Sorry. Let me- Awesome. Cool. So I'm Luke. I'm one of the initial members of the PrimeDAO team. I currently run strategy inside of PrimeDAO, and I run my own lab called Collectivo Labs.
Awesome. And Figue, a lot of us know you, but how about a quick intro from you yourself as well?
Yeah. I'm one of the founders of Paladin, and yeah, I probably do the very similar job to what Luke does, honestly, at the around Collectivo in Prime. Um, Maybe for the people who are a bit less aware of what Prime does, Luke, could you give us a bit more details on what you guys are building and just a bit more details about that?
Yeah, 100%. We started Prime in early 2020 as just an idea on how we could merge the latest DAO innovations with DeFi platforms. I grew up, quote unquote, inside of Genesis Alpha, which was one of the first DAOs created by DAOstack back in 2018. So in 2020, when DeFi started to really grow big, we already had about 2 years of DAO governance coordination experience under our belt. And I really felt that there needs to be better overlap between human coordination, DAO governance, and innovation, and the DeFi primitives that were coming around. Ever since we've done a couple iterations where we've currently evolved into becoming more of a DAO innovation and coordination hub, where we have incubated multiple products inside of PrimeDAO, and we're able to provide an ecosystem service where we have a toolkit for DAOs to launch either with a seed round or LBP, manage their liquidity, get a opinion on their project, and finally, we've created a framework for DAO to DAO deal making. And it all kind of comes together in our thesis that we believe collaboration outcompetes competition in the long run, and that if DAOs as an ecosystem collaborate more and we have more pathways for that collaboration, that ultimately we will improve not just the value of the space, but also the potential positive output that all these DAOs can create in terms of impact DAOs and what so. So over the past years, we've really built that machine, and we're now slowly iterating more and more towards also the financial liquidity management side of DAO creation.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Something when we started working with you guys that we found very synergetic with us is that you guys are basically doing the full stack from basically bootstrapping to liquidity for projects while we're trying to fix the services around governance. So in a sense, project that work with Prime should at some point have questions that will relate to the products we're creating at Paladin. So we've been working with pleasure with you guys because we think there's a lot of things that can be done together, not just on the point of synergies with the potential clients we have together, but also with the products that we are building together. And I think we're starting to get to some very interesting results with what's starting to being built on Balancer. So for a bit more context, at Paladin, we started building vote lending on Aave. Then we iterated by releasing Warden for Boost Marketplace on Curve, then Quest to create gauge emissions. We've been arguably doing really well on the gauge emissions on Curve. So now we're trying to scale this on Balancer too. We released Quest Balancer last week. Since then, you can now create Quest to basically earn emissions from the Balancer gauge by instead paying incentives to the veBAL holders. There's currently two Quests live, ours and Prime. Um, what I'd love to understand, and maybe that's where we can start the discussion on this, is do you want to explain maybe what is Balancer? How does this relate to Prime and what you guys are building and what you have been focusing on this AMM specifically, maybe?
Definitely. Yeah, so Balancer is one, if not the most flexible protocol for AMMs. One of the benefits early on of Balancer was that it allowed people to create multi token pools So instead of having just a pool between 2 assets, you were able to create pools between 3, 4, even up to 8 assets. And the promise that also you can then take these LP tokens, which can contain 8 tokens, you could also put them again into new pools. So they've always been really at the edge of AMM innovation. And recently they have doubled down on kind of launching different pool types, which each have their own benefits and their own structures. I think next to Uniswap or together with Uniswap, it's the most advanced AMM protocol, but also one of the most advanced technical teams. They always rate extremely well in terms of dev capacity. I myself spent around 6 to 9 months, I think, even working as part of the Balancer DAO, really trying to progress it from the inside out. One of the things that was missing early on in the Balancer ecosystem was a product to use the so-called liquidity bootstrapping pools, which is one of the pool types that you can kind of hack together inside of Balancer that allows for fair price discovery of a new token. Back when we started, there was no such product. When Prime did its initial community offering, we had to use Mesa, which was an old product by Gnosis, which didn't seem to solve our needs. So that's how we started working with Balancer. We started working on a grant that we got from them to build out a better front end for LBPs. Now, across that time, alternative platforms also launched that offer LBPs, one of the most recognized ones being Copper Launch. And over time, our vision at Prime also continued to evolve towards more of this kind of inclusive package. So another thing that we have been looking at around Balancer, especially recently, is this new veBAL tokenomics, which I'll quickly try to explain, but maybe Figue, you're the main expert here, and I think it's also good for you to explain. But essentially, Balancer has liquidity rewards being streamed weekly to providers of liquidity. Currently, they have changed that model to a VE model similar to Curve, where depending on the amount of voting escrowed or locked BEL, in the case of Balancer, it's Balancer ETH, you have an influence on where the liquidity rewards are going to be streamed. And this creates a whole market, a whole dynamic around those liquidity pools. Now, we at Prime started working on a solution called Prime Pools, which would optimize and improve the veBAL game because there are certain triggers. One of the main ones being that depending on the amount of veBAL locked on an account, there will be additional liquidity rewards up to 2.5 times the rewards. This is one of the main mechanics that these aggregators, for example, currently Aura, they utilize that mechanism to create value for the end user that is holding LP tokens and allowing them to leverage their platform to get better returns. In the end, that's what the people in DeFi want. So we have been working on those 2 projects. So one, the LBP with Launch, and the other side pools with Prime Pools. But the real vision here is not specifically that only part. The real vision is that we can help and curate potential solid and strong DAOs, help them go to market, help them launch a solid token economy, then maintain the liquidity for that token, and as they mature, allow them to make deals with each other, really to create this DAO-to-DAO coordination vehicle.
So that's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of very, very interesting stuff, and I don't know if it helped the people in the audience, but I think it's a very good way to clarify what's Prime's mission and current roadmap in a sense. For full disclosure, I think we've written blog posts about this if people are interested, but we use the LBP system to bootstrap Paladin's liquidity with Prime DL. No, it's not DL, I'm sorry, Launch. And we've had a wonderful experience with it. I think we've written an article and there's a replay on our YouTube channel if people want to hear more about our experience on that. What struck me with Balancer, and I think it's very relevant to what you said, is that they have an infrastructure that's built to basically experiment and create more complex structures on top of an AMM. So it's not simply an AMM. I never say Uniswap, Curve, or Balancer. There's a better option. I think they all provide very different options of liquidity, and that's what's really interesting. And arguably, we could also add SushiSwap in the mix. Not that they're doing cross-chain swap, for example. I think that's something that was very much put into to its essence by Fernando, one of Balancer's founder. During FCC, he made a talk about how to build on Balancer. And there's a real incentive that's probably going to evolve a lot with the veBAL system to basically build on Balancer. And now Balancer is not just a technology game. With the Tokenomics, it becomes a financial game, because the more you lock and the more you push toward gauges where you have control, protocol and liquidity, for example, the more you can accumulate BAL and the more it gives you power around the DAO. There's something that we have to understand that's very important. Right now, over 90% of the BAL ETH LP is locked as veBAL, because unlike CRV, you don't just lock the governance token, you lock LP token, which is very relevant because it allows BAL to have a very deep liquidity pool. The second thing that we have to take into account is that BAL was a much older token, in the sense that much more of it was put on the market before creating the VE system. So even though there's a large part of the LP who are locked, it actually represents a very small part of the whole BAL tokens on the market. I think we have something like 80% of the BAL tokens that are still like circulating and not locked. So that's a very strong point, which means that even though Aura had a very strong start in terms of locking, there's definitely options for them to basically not be a dominant actor. So history will tell what will happen next, but it means that there's huge opportunities for other players to basically build aggregators and build farming opportunities on top of Curve. So that's why we're super excited about Prime Pools, because I think it's going to bring a very interesting identity to all of this. If I remember correctly, Luuk, you guys have had a grant on.
You dropped off for a moment, but I think you said you guys received a grant. So yes, we did receive a grant early on for Prime launch. On the pools part, we did not receive a grant because we've been able to bootstrap it internally inside of Prime.
Yeah, I think we lost you, Luuk.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Great. I think maybe a couple things that I wanted to highlight in this chat and have a conversation around with all of you. I remember Paladin really coming from this perspective of better governance and coordinating and improving governance. And from where I'm standing today, I feel that the latest iteration of DAO governance has definitely brought a lot of good innovation, but I also feel that there's so much that we still need to explore and better understand and better communicate, and that now there's only a limited amount of actors that truly understand these systems and that leverage them extremely effectively, with the other maybe 90% of the bell curve just losing out and not understanding what's going on. I think that one of the things that excites me most about this space is that in a span of 1 year, all assumptions that we have can be challenged and changed. I still remember when Compound was the first to introduce liquidity mining. That's not even 2 years ago, I believe. So there's still so much that we need to explore, and I think what I'm super excited to explore about this innovation that Prime and Paladin are pushing forward is understanding how we can do this in a more efficient, planned, and sustainable way that isn't something that is going to lead eventually to the ship sinking, but how we can create models where we actually help the ship grow and where we help it forward. Because now we're talking about hundreds or thousands of DAOs, maybe a couple hundred that are realistically really running and have the capabilities to run a system like this. But we still have a couple of orders of magnitude to go. That's kind of the market that's still out there. So I think that the innovation we're doing is still extremely early, and anything can still happen, but it's definitely helpful that we are pushing the boundaries of governance, of financial design, of liquidity management, of AMMs, because eventually all these innovations will be able to be packed together to bring more assets to the space. And I'm really talking about not just a couple billion, but really thinking about the trillions, which I think we will have the infrastructure for in a couple years.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree about that. I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation. We're still seeing a lot of it right now. Some not used at scale because it is hard to experiment at scale, of course. I guess today what we're trying to do with Paladin is a bit different from what we started out, not because we pivoted, but because we realized that there were opportunities to explore some interesting things. So we're basically separating into multiple business lines, I would say. One around the pure vote lending and governance aspect, one around the boosts, which is kind of tied to what we're doing with Quest. What we're looking at with Quest is basically governance arbitrage. In a sense, a token has utility. Today, if you look at BAL, you have the voting power, then you have the fees, then you have the gauge weight votes, and then you have the boosts. And if you unpackage all of this, you realize that there's a lot of value literally in the token itself. And when I'm talking about the value, you can quantify it very easily without even talking about the boost with the gauge weight. So that's where what the market likes to call bribes. We're not a fan of it. It enables you to quantify the actual value of the token just with the gauge weight. So how do you do that? Today, in the Tokenomics system in veBAL, I think you can say that one veBAL controls roughly 15 cents of incentives per week. So a veBAL is roughly $15. So if you think of it this way, you basically control 1% of the value of your veBAL every week. It doesn't go direct in your pocket, right? But what's interesting about that is that we're starting to realize that a veBAL, someone who owns a V token, is not just a governor. He has another job, which is a capital allocator. His job is to direct the emissions of the protocol. And that creates some very interesting opportunities for two reasons. Right now, the people who do this, who direct the veBAL, they either direct it to their DAO or to the pairs they're farming on, or they direct it to who pays them better, because that's how they extract value. So there are people who are actually ready to pay because they realize that there is an arbitrage between the cost of a token and the price to buy its vote. So it's actually cheaper to buy the vote than to actually put the emissions yourself. So on Balancer today, that is not the case on everywhere, especially because Balancer has been subsidizing the market, has been pushing the price up. So Quest today is the only market where you can actually get directly on the veBAL layer a viable option to do that. But what's super interesting and that we're exploring a lot, it's not about just giving a value to a token, but it's about finding the different jobs that governors have. And what we're realizing, which is complicated, is that not everyone is fit to be a capital allocator, not everyone is fit to be a governor, not everyone is fit to be a farmer. Like everyone has their different objectives and goals in crypto. And the next governance models we're going to have to build are just going to be around these kind of pillars. And we're going to have to understand what kind of users want what, and how do we empower them to do their job correctly. There was this post I saw on Confessions today, which angered me a bit, where it was like a founder of a big, I'm going to say quote unquote crypto project, saying that he thought the community was just a decoration and that they were useless. I think that's a very big mistake, and that's how you spot projects who won't actually succeed on the long term, because you actually need not the community, but contributors, people who come in, who give you new energy, who give you new ideas. And if you don't empower them, in 5 to 10 years, your protocol will not exist anymore.
I agree 100%. So I think one thing that we've been going through at Prime over the past weeks is really reevaluating basically all our values, because we felt that over the past year so much has changed, both in terms of builders and teams and also the outside environment, that we need every year to really reevaluate everything that we're doing. I'm super excited what we're moving towards. We're working on a new governance tokenomics structure that will value the different type of stakeholders more properly. Just yesterday, there was a good post going out by Lighthouse DAO, which is very similar to what we're working on. Kind of the proper valuation of contributors, users, and backers, and really optimizing for people to become all three of that at the same time. So someone that contributes, someone that invests, and also someone that uses, and then you really hit the sweet spot of ownership, where you are the table. You're really at the middle of things. You know what's going on. You feel the pain if the product doesn't do what you want it to do. You feel the pain financially. You're motivated and empowered to work towards making it better. And I feel that is one of the most exciting things about DAOs and this space in general, is that we're able to experiment with new types of reward and coordination structures that hopefully lead to more effective and purposeful organizations.
On that note,
Yeah.
Luuk, I wanted to dive in further to your experience with Balance Request. So, you've been, of course, having the quest for the past week. How's the experience been thus far? Have you monitored the quest stats on our DApp? Any positive feedback, critical
Yeah.
feedback?
So the quest is doing what we expected the quest to do, and that is not giving out money if people are not willing to accept a certain reward, and giving out money if people do. We have currently about 75% of our quest filled. The best thing about this is that there's no maintenance, no calculation post deploying. We know what we're deploying, we know why we're deploying it, we know that we're okay with it, and we don't need to discuss it. And I think that this is really exciting for the long run, because here we are able to bring it almost back to a science, the science of liquidity management. We're able to run calculations, we're able to run numbers, we're able to really set things up that will run as we prep them. And that's especially relevant for us with Prime Launch, as we're now working together with Cello also on a big refi launchpad, where we'll have dozens of projects launching. And those projects want some sort of a liquidity program. Oftentimes, they don't know exactly what that is. And by having Quest, we can work with them on creating a more informed and precise liquidity campaign. And I think that's super exciting. So I'm really happy that this is around. I'm looking forward to integrating this even deeper into our workflow, into both internally in Prime, but also helping other partners get up to speed. I think one thing that I've realized is that things always go slower than we expect them to go until they don't. I think that right now, in the coming weeks and months, the system might take some time to get up to steam. But I think once we have the Prime coordination machine ready, once we have the Quest integrated completely, and all these projects are ready to launch, I think then the next wave is going to be exponential and really fast and big.
Yeah, that's a very strong point. I think it's very softly and then very suddenly going very strong. And in a sense, we've also noticed that not just product adoption, but activity in general can be very volatile. And once it clicks for 1, for 10, for 100 users, it can very quickly scale, especially once you're in the right chains. So if you remove frictions because of cost, because you're on an L2, or if you create a vault system, it can very quickly blow up. I think we're in a very interesting part of the ecosystem where I think we've had this chat privately, Luuk, but there's been little innovation in governance publicly and at scale for the past few months / year. Like the last big thing I would guess was probably Snapshot. So we should be ready to see something pretty impressive soon. I hope. We at Paladin, we don't have the arrogance of saying we're going to build the future of governance. I think there's a lot of very smart people working on that. But we follow very closely what's happening and trying to build the right flywheels and the right synergies to keep this going forward. Right now, we're working on Aave, on Curve, now on Bouncer. Something that we haven't talked about, which I think is very interesting, is that Bouncer has been pushing what they call core pools. So they've realized that having yield-bearing assets provided on their AMM was very lucrative for them. So they've been pushing for this. I'm not sure if this is going to be the final direction that Bouncer is going to take. I would actually be surprised if this was the case. I know they're working on modular LPs where you could basically be able to modify the percentage of ratio between different assets in the same pool, which honestly would be crazy powerful. But today what we're seeing is that there's a lot of growth in the community, like globally in all of the governance systems. I'm not saying all the people are aligned. I'm saying we're getting better every day. And I think that's a very promising mean to basically follow.
I completely agree. And I think I think this mini bear market, and I kind of hope it's over. It was fun while it lasted, but I do think that it was a really good pause for all of us to read and look around us and realize why we're doing this again, what we're building, what we really want to build. And I feel that most teams that didn't burn their house during this period are now closer together and more capable at building out this big vision that they had prior to this crazy bull run that we had over the past year.
Honestly, I don't think we have seen the last of the bear, and I don't want to be a party pooper on that. But it's just that everything is going so wrong everywhere around us that it seems like a bit, I would say, surrealist to see that, to think that crypto is going to outperform the whole economy. And I don't see this as a bad thing, because today, if you're building value in crypto, you're not in a bear. Like, you don't have any fundraising opportunities, you don't have anyone that wants to use your product. There's just harder traction to grow. But if you have something that is qualitative, people will come. I mean, we've had record revenue in July, even though we've been live for 9 months on different suites of products. I think it's not a random act. It's just that we're hinting at some point of product market fit. There's tons of opportunities for people who want to manage the liquidity better, tons of people who want to manage the treasury better. And Quest is kind of an answer to that, because it links them to different AMMs who are starting to fight for liquidity. Because one of the biggest problems, as you mentioned today, is that there's a lack of liquidity and people are not managing it correctly. So if you start tying yourself up with different AMMs because they have the right tokenomics to track you, it becomes a very interesting battle to align different stakeholders, not just governors, but also liquidity providers.
Amen to that. I think we're in an exciting spot, and I really think that both Paladin and also Prime, our biggest time is yet to come. We've been building really hard over the past times, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. Should we open the floor to questions, or maybe Alejandro, do you still have questions that you wanted to ask?
Let's do it.
Yeah, before we open the floor to questions, actually, it was very timely. Balancer just posted another tweet about their new collective, the Orb Collective. So I wanted to get your thoughts on maybe how that could play into Prime and Quest with Balancer Quest. Do you think there's any? I mean, obviously it's hard to tell if we're going to find builders with them, but do you think there's some good synergy there, or how do you think the Orb Collective would evolve? A very, very open question.
Yeah, I have good faith in Orb Collective. I've been around Balancer DAO when this was started to be formed, and it became clear that having one building entity in an ecosystem is most likely not the way to go. You want to open up your ecosystem to a diverse set of builders. And with Balancer DAO having Balancer Labs, having the Orb Collective, having a whole bunch of grantees, and teams like Paladin and Prime around it, I think that's really the way to go. So I'm very excited to see more diversity in builder groups, and I think that that's actually a good thing for the ecosystem. I do have a hard stop in a couple minutes, so maybe let's take a question or two from the public, and then I gotta jump off.
Absolutely. Okay. This is the AMA section of the the AMA section, the comment section of the AMA. So whoever wants to come up, please raise your hand, and I will put you up as a speaker. No takers? Okay, looks like we have a silent audience. Well, for those who have questions, of course, we can reach us out on Twitter. Luuk, what's the best place that people can find more information on PrimeDAO? Their Twitter, their Discord?
Yeah, best is to follow us on Twitter, PrimeDAO _, or on our website, prime.xyz. And you can also always follow me, shoot me a message. I'll probably reply late, but I will reply with a lot of love. So if you're interested, please feel free to reach out, especially if you're interested in DAO to DAO innovation and regenerative finance. We're the place to be. Thanks so much for hosting me, by the way.
Yep, the Prime is clearly the place for DAO to DAO innovation. They've been doing, as Luuk mentioned, a real deep dive on Refi, which personally we haven't had the time yet to look at. So I can't wait to actually dive into this. But in the meantime, if you want to see what we're up to, you can look at our new newsletter, which is called The Gauge Weekly, which basically dissects what's happening in the curve and balancer gauge to understand the new move, the political wars, and all the governance arbitrage opportunities that you can basically take advantage of. Yeah, thank you very much for showing up, guys, and enjoy your day.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys. Take care.